Backup request.
Really wish I had a complete set of socket wrenches. Can never find... Ugh, it feels so good to sit down. My back was killing me. should really find time to clean and oil these tools. Don't want them to get rusty. It's so good to sit down. My back was killing me. Really wish I had a complete set of socket wrenches. Can never find the 5/16 when you need it.